Now we're facing quite a dilemma right now in terms of this country and in terms of our democracy. We're going to be talking to Professor Henry Farrell about that. Um, it's all coming around a time where one of the key mechanisms to ensure that people have access to or the ability to vote and that our politics are not completely overrun by money and that we don't have one party redistricting in such a way that makes it virtually impossible for any type of democratic results to take place. And by democratic, I mean, largely speaking, one person, one vote, and how that reflects in terms of their representation. That is all in the air. And apparently, Anderson Cooper sat down with Barack Obama, and here is Barack Obama, who I want to remind everybody said every 18 months of his presidency, almost like clockwork, if the Republicans win in the off-year election, the fever's going to break. And he would say, and if the Republicans lose, the fever's going to break. And he spent years, months and months and months, and wasted valuable time in trying to negotiate the ACA with them. He tried to, frankly, cut Social Security increases, cost of living increases. The Republicans, fortunately for a lot of us, were too intransigent to say yes to him. But he still will not let go of this premise, and it is becoming very problematic, I would suggest. Here's that clip.
And the leadership of the GOP, briefly for one night when they still had this sort of sense of fear in them, going against the president.
And then poof, suddenly everybody was back in line. Now, the reason for that is because the base believed it. The base believed it because this had been told to them not just by the president, but by the media that they watch. And nobody stood up and said, stop. This is enough. This is not true. I won't say nobody. Let me correct it. There were some very brave people who did their jobs, like the Secretary of State in Georgia, who was then viciously attacked for it. And all those congressmen started looking around and they said, you know what, I'll lose my job. I'll get voted out of office. Another way of saying this is I didn't expect that there would be so few people who would say, well, I don't mind losing my office because this is too important. America's too important.
Some things are more important than just...
Our democracy is too important. We didn't see that. Now, I'm still the hope and change guy, and so my hope is that the tides will turn, but that does require each of us to understand that this experiment in democracy is not self-executing. It doesn't happen just automatically. It happens because each successive generation says these values, these truths we hold self-evident. This is important. We're going to invest in it and sacrifice for it, and we'll stand up for it, even when it's not politically convenient.
What's so infuriating about this is that he clearly, and look, as a private individual, I don't care what Barack Obama does. Frankly, I mean, I have an opinion, but I don't care that much. But when he gets out there as the former president and reiterates the same thing he said throughout his entire 2 terms of presidency, that my hope is the tide will turn. These are not tides. Tides exist in nature, and the moon dictates the tides. His passivity and his notion that this is just going to happen in some way, the fever is going to break. And frankly, Joe Biden said the same thing. We are now at the 6-month point where he said the Republicans are going to come around. You watch, man, no joke. They're going to come around. This relentless belief that something's going to happen on its own And he even says democracy is not self-executing. It is not automatic. Where is the proposal to do something beyond? My hope is that each of us understand. People don't just wake up one morning and go like, hey, wait a second. Maybe I shouldn't be so interested in my own power and instead just acquiesce to democracy. That's not the way it works.
Well, I mean, he hedges in that too. This experiment in democracy is not self-executing, as he passively describes how essentially Republicans needing to abandon their careerism in order to hold truths as self-evident and believe in our democracy. That is a very passive admission that you believe that it should be self-executing. That's the exact definition of it. So he contradicts himself in that own statement. And he completely, and he did this throughout his presidency, as you mentioned, absolves himself of the responsibility that he has to move that needle, to push the democracy towards a more healthy area, and he continues to do so after he's left office, where I guess you would think maybe you could be more honest and have less obligations, but he's still the same guy in this area.
He is still exactly the same guy, and it's, you know, his opinion on the matter is irrelevant. What is far more relevant is a call to action, yet there is none. And we're going to talk in just a moment with Professor Henry Farrell. He is professor of international affairs at Johns Hopkins University and also the Washington Post Monkey Cage editor-in-chief on that very question of what we need to do to salvage our precarious democracy. We'll be back in just a moment with Professor Farrell.